The Unlikely Innovators with Mike Commito and Steve Gravel. Presented by Cambrian R&D and the Center for Smart Mining.
Mike, we're recording this podcast on Friday, which means I'm wearing flannel, which means we look like Tim Allen and Richard Karn from Home Improvement. So I'm Al Borland and you're Tim Taylor, and it couldn't be for a better guest. We have Brent Neilly on from Milwaukee Tools. I think it's perfect that I look like this and that we're having them on.
We've finally taken our final form on the Unlikely Innovators. It's definitely tool time. No, it was and you've always looked like Al Borland, I find. So this is just I think happenstance that we finally kind of come together. And I think it does make sense because obviously the flannel and the beard. And I think of the two of us, like, you would be the more proficient, sensible one with power tools, and I would be the one going for rides,
more power
with the tools, and having you have to bail me out of some of those jams, right? So
I don't think so, Mike.
We did not plan that, but no. So that is great. But our guest today was great. Brent Neilly, who is the director of product marketing for Milwaukee Tool Canada. He within that product marketing group, he oversees hand tools, storage, and safety. But yeah, it was really interesting to talk to Brent today. He kind of shared about, he had an unlikely journey. We kind of assumed going into it that he would have been like a power tool geek as a kid, and that was kind of the path that he went down. But I think he had kind of an unlikely journey, having some experience in the construction industry, but also having, the business corporate communications background. I think those two together kind of really blended nicely. And that's kind of how his career with Milwaukee took off. But again, there were so many things that I had learned today, like on the fly, despite the fact of trying to research Milwaukee in advance, that like I didn't realize, that Sawzall was like the Kleenex of reciprocating saws. That was just something I just assumed that's just what we called it. I didn't realize that was a Milwaukee specific product offering that, we call it that all the time, even if it's not a Milwaukee Sawzall, because it would just be a reciprocating saw, but stuff like that. And of course, now you and I are set for golf because now we know that Tiger Woods uses Milwaukee ball markers. So what do you think?
I really hope that it can mark wet balls because or sand covered balls or sort of grass stained balls, because I think that's what it'll have to do in order to give me an edge.
I think anything is an incremental gain for us at this point. So
well, and I knew a guy once who said, like, look good, feel good, play good.
Yeah.
If we look the part with a Milwaukee pen, the kind that Tiger Woods uses, I think it's inevitable that we'll play better.
But enough about golf. Let's talk about Milwaukee Tool Canada and some of the innovative stuff they've been doing with Brent Neilly. So we're back. We're now pleased to be joined by Brent Neilly, who is the director of product marketing for Milwaukee Tool Canada. With a background in business communications and former experience working within the construction industry, throughout his entire career, Brent has continuously demonstrated his leadership as an innovator. Graduating from Brock University with a BA in business / corporate communications in 2007, Brent joined Milwaukee Tool Canada in 2013, working as a field sales representative covering an area of Orillia to Timmins, which, as Steve and I being northern boys know, that is a very big area. And then as a job site core trade specialist within the GTA in Southern Ontario. His success in identifying and developing innovative plans to convert strategic users in the trades from competitor products led him to quickly rise the ranks and implement successful provincial and national strategy as a key senior national marketing manager, becoming the first utility specialist in Canada. Currently, his focus is as director of product marketing to design, implement forward-thinking strategies to build strategic partnerships with industry leaders in both global and national markets to target, convert, and service the largest power tool users in the country. And now he is a guest on the Unlikely Innovators. Brent, welcome to the show.
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me, Mike and Steve. I'm excited to talk to you about the growth and innovation that we've seen at Milwaukee over the last few decades. It's been crazy to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking forward to getting into that with you as well. But as I mentioned, the show is called The Unlikely Innovators. So we always like to open our show by asking a question to our guests. And I think with you, the question we would ask is, you're obviously talking to us from Milwaukee now, but as a kid, or maybe in your younger days, was power tools and tools always something that you were drawn to, or is this more of an unlikely path that you took to get here?
I would say it's highly unlikely. And the stars kind of aligned on this one for me. After school, when I went to Brock, it was a pretty tough job market. There weren't a lot of companies hiring. And if they weren't really brands that I felt passionate enough about to join and get on board with. So while I was searching for a job, I started as a laborer with a construction company. And it was there when I really started to notice how brand loyal tradespeople were. I mean, they would they fight and bicker over anything, but they would really get into it when we talked about, hey, I've got a better drill, my saw is faster. And it was interesting to see. And coming from my marketing background and business communications, that really kind of struck me. So I actually came across an ad for Tectronic Industries, which for those who don't know is the parent company of Milwaukee. And I love the Milwaukee brand from working in construction. And I really thought it was a great tie from kind of what I'd done for my education to what I was currently doing. So again, kind of unlikely, but the stars aligned. So I applied and eventually received a screening call, which is a kind of a funny story. I felt the screening call went pretty well, and I waited and waited, and after not hearing anything, I started phoning the head office, which obviously doesn't get you anywhere. You're phoning a 1-800 number. So one day, one of the girls who conducted the screening call reached out to ask some further questions, but still didn't have a position. But now I had a direct line and someone to call and harass. So I harassed that poor girl. I mean, we're all good now. I still talk to her. She's still at the company, and we're pretty close. But eventually, she just said, she's like, "All right, you know what? Hold on. The hiring manager is here at the office. I'm going to put you in front of them." From there, I got an interview. And while that was going on, I actually reconnected with a friend from Brock. And we were just chatting, catching up, obviously. And I was asking him, "Hey, what are you doing for work?" And he mentioned that he was working at a company called TTI. And he's like, "You've probably never heard of them." And I was like, "Well, funny enough, I've got an interview with them next week." So he asked me who the manager was, put in a good word for me. I did the interview. It obviously went well. And a few weeks later, I started my entry-level position, as you mentioned, covering the retail stores from Aurelia to Timmins. And then from there, I was off to the races. I joined the job site solutions team, which you also mentioned, basically going site to site on industrial job sites, showing the latest and greatest new products that Milwaukee had to offer. From there, I kind of started to really round out a good portfolio of customers in the utility space. So like the Hydro Ones, Toronto Hydro, Electra, Greater Sudbury Hydro, for the local folks. Mm-hmm. And it was really good timing again, another unlikely situation where Milwaukee was actually set to launch a new line of lineman tools under our Force Logic sub-brand. So naturally, when the company looked to dedicate a body to this trade, I was the perfect fit with my current portfolio of customers. So it was really there that I found my niche. I mean, the people in that trade are really great people, and I met a lot of great contacts early on, which I still keep in touch with today. And it led to a lot of success, just that relationship piece. And because of the success we were seeing, Milwaukee then rolled out a national team of specialists designed to work with his trade. And again, stars aligning, I was the perfect fit because I was doing the role already. So I managed that team based on my prior experience. And from there, we established really a simple go-to-market strategy for trade commercialization in the power tool space. And we rolled that strategy out across our plumbing and electrical trades, which are two that are near and dear to Milwaukee. And then 3 new trade verticals that we've recently added in general contractors, transportation maintenance, and this one is a Sudbury Special of Mining.
Wow, I mean, I think your stick-to-itiveness was actually a pretty good audition to be a salesperson. The constantly following up. So maybe they saw a bit of that hunger in you as well. One of the things, and I'm so interested to talk more about the sort of mining vertical that you guys have as well, because I manage the Center for Smart Mining, which is one of our research institutes here at Cambrian. But Milwaukee's been around since 1924. And gosh, as long as I could remember growing up in my house, it's a household name, Milwaukee Tools. What are some of the first things that you think your customers think about when they hear the brand name Milwaukee?
Yeah, and if I can, maybe I'll reverse the question on two. You get your immediate response for the two of you.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're a Milwaukee shop here actually. So at the Center for Smart Mining, we're all Milwaukee Tools. One of the things, reliability, interoperability, flexibility. That just off the top of my head. I mean, I'm sure it would be different if we asked some of our student researchers and others, but Yeah, that's what comes to mind first, I think.
Yeah, I think for us internally, one thing that comes to mind for me is Sawzall. From a legacy perspective, going back to 1924, that's our original innovation. And for those that don't know, Milwaukee invented the Sawzall, basically an electric power or battery powered hacksaw used by pretty much every tradesperson and even homeowners.
Yeah.
So if you hear the word Sawzall, it's in Milwaukee. Everything else in the market is a reciprocating saw. So it's kind of like that Kleenex analogy.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
interesting. Yeah,
There
okay.
you go.
Because we call it a sawzall, and I think we're saying it right because our reciprocating saws are Milwaukee. But that's that's when you know you've really made it with a product, right? Is when it's the shorthand for all of that class of unit, right?
Exactly. And even the Sawzall itself has seen, like, again, going back to innovation, it's seen a ton of innovation over time. A majority of our Sawzalls now have shifted to what, even when I was in the trade 10, 12 years ago, they were all electric. Now everything is battery operated, and there's abundance of technology and safety features built in them. I mean, little things like anti-vibration handles. So like when you're cutting, it reduces long-term stress injuries from using a tool that vibrates that much, right? And then now we even got a product called the hacksaw. So it's a one-handed sawzall where you can now hold the material and make the cut at the same time for a lot better control. And another one that we've actually recently added to the Sawzall is what we call One Key. So, and this is a little bit more complex. It's an app-based software that Bluetooth connects to the tool. And you may be asking, why the heck would I want to connect Bluetooth to my Sawzall? But what you can actually do with the Bluetooth is set up a couple functions. One of them would be auto stop. So the tool has the sensor in it where it'll actually recognize once the cut's complete, and whether your trigger is or your finger is on the trigger or not, it'll actually stop cutting. So you don't cut unintended material behind it. You don't cut wires, which could be dangerous. Or more importantly, you don't cut yourself. So that's one of the functionalities of that. And then customization too. So now you can actually, Sawzalls are so complex that you can go in, dial in the material that you're cutting and the thickness. It'll actually recommend a blade and then optimize the RPM and the stroke to make sure that application is done correctly. So, I mean, a good example is when you're cutting through dense metals, a lot of times you'll see that chatter, the Sawzall's bouncing across the material, scraping the material, and it's a hazard. So what the new saws can do is they'll actually score a line slowly into that material before they kick into high gear and drive through that.
That's unreal.
Yeah, it sounds like even I could use it at that rate, right?
If I can do it, you can do it.
I was going to say, in the vein of innovation, is there anywhere you can get a sensor in them so that our students will know when we're in a meeting? Because it seems like every time we fire up a meeting, the Sawzall's going in the shop and it's so loud, whatever material they're cutting.
This would be the perfect one for that to happen.
Yeah, good.
But Brent, you mentioned the Sawzall as one of the early, product offerings that Milwaukee has. And again, I didn't realize that was like, when we refer to that as the shorthand, like we're actually referring to a Milwaukee product. So that's a great, piece of trivia for us. And I mean, Steve and I are historians by training, so we geek out on that stuff all the time. But because we are historians, we love to hear more things like that. Is there anything else in terms of like some of the early product offerings, that Milwaukee had from the company's early origins that you think about or that you talk to customers about as like, hey, I bet you didn't know that this is something that we had pioneered and it's something that you kind of take for granted now, but that's what we were doing back in, the days of the Second World War or whatever it may be.
Yeah, there's probably two. I talked about the Sawzall, but another one is what we call the Super Hog or the Whole Hog. And for those that aren't familiar with tools, basically it's a high-powered right-angle drill designed for getting in between studs and joists. So during the housing boom in the early 1960s, residential framers struggled to get the tools to fit between the studs and joists because of the old style. They were big, bulky, and to be honest, they were probably a little underpowered for that application. So Milwaukee came up with a right angle design. It fit between those studs and joists and had a crazy amount of power to get through that application, but it was an extremely dangerous tool. So it actually came with what everybody thinks is a handle for the tool. It's actually a brace. So if that tool, if the bit gets caught in a knot or gets caught in nails, what have you, instead of taking the user for a ride, that brace will slam into the studs or joists, and it'll actually stop the tool from rotating and reduce the potential for somebody to go for a ride with the tool. But like I mentioned with the Sawzall, that's one of those things that we've also seen an innovation just on that product alone to alleviate that issue. So a lot of our recent, and again, cordless models now come with more safety technology built into them. So they have the ability to sense bind up situations that'll actually shut down rather than causing harm to the user. So, I mean, you're probably starting to see a trend here, and everything that we're doing, we're getting more powerful. The tools are going cordless, but we're also seriously considering the safety for the user because injuries happen on site, and we want to do our best to reduce them.
And I'm so glad you mentioned cordless because Mike knows this. I spent the better part of a year helping my sister build a house. She had one of those home hardware houses that where you order and all the materials come, and we used Milwaukee exclusively on that too. I think that was my dad's proclivity. They use it in his shop where he works, but a lot of those find their way home to the home shop too. That's a little inside baseball for anyone who works in mining. A lot of those end up at home, but I won't say my dad's name. But I mean, everything from the drills to I think the radio was even Milwaukee. Um, there were no cords, you know, when we first. I remember I was like about 12 years old when my dad built our family home, and that we were just extension cords everywhere, right? But now, I mean, like the work site was so decluttered from cords. It was incredible. When we're thinking about cordless, I mean, Milwaukee refers to itself as a world leader in cordless innovation. What do you think sort of sets Milwaukee apart in that regard? Because I mean, it was just happenstance that we were using Milwaukee, but what do you think really sets you apart in that space?
Yeah, I mean, our goal, and we're dedicated, like you said, to be the world leader in cordless innovation. Our goal is to continue that and be first to market with great product. But first, we need to make sure that it's got to outperform the corded or gas predecessor, or else there's going to be no user adoption. So we dipped our toes into the water in cordless back in, I believe it was around '08 with our V18 platform. We're the first ones to try lithium ion. Everyone else was using nickel cadmium at the time. And we learned a lot. It was a complete disaster. Luckily, at the time, we had probably 0.1% market share, so we didn't tick off too many customers. But we relaunched and launched M18, which is the platform you're probably familiar with now. And what the difference was is that was truly an intelligent tool system that actually had microchips in the tool, battery, and charger that could all talk and communicate feedback. And the next evolution of that was we launched what we call Fuel. So it was pretty groundbreaking, and we took that intelligent system and added a high-powered brushless motor, which constantly measures the load on the end of the tool and adapts the discharge from the battery, which is proprietary technology. So what that does for an end user or yourself gives you longer run times when you're doing smaller application stuff, but it's also got that loaded power on demand. So a perfect example, you're driving a drywall screw. The tool is probably going to recognize it doesn't need full power for that application, and it's only going to draw what it needs from the battery. So you get longer runtime in smaller applications, but like I said, you have that loaded power when you need it. So a lot of other platforms at the time, and even to this day, some platforms still operate this way, where when you pull the trigger and you start using the tool, you get full draw from the battery, which is wasted runtime, which is a necessity on job sites. And then kind of even more, we've now added what we call, like I mentioned, one key into a lot of the tools. And it's not just the Bluetooth connection to the tool. It's actually a full inventory management system. The one thing you mentioned that with the tools going missing, we were hearing that a lot from managers and users alike. As tools have shifted from corded to cordless, batteries and tools were going missing. And people were having an issue with shrinkage. So we developed a cloud-based inventory management system called OneKey, and that allows users to log every single tool, whether it's Milwaukee or not, into their inventory and then assign it to jobs so that they can help better forecast for projects, and then just really know where the tools are and mitigate theft. But where our technology differs from some inventory management systems is those OneKey tools, like the Sawzall I mentioned before, you can actually track that tool. It has physical tracking capabilities in the tool. And then for tools or equipment that are not OneKey or not even Milwaukee, you can actually add what we call a Milwaukee tick to it. Basically, it's a construction grade Apple tag. And we were actually first to market with that technology. And it'll track your equipment as well. And then the last piece to that one key is you can customize the tools and really get the most out of the tool and the most out of the accessory that you put in the tool. So it's really an optimized system. And then lastly, like cordless innovation, this is the biggest and latest and greatest thing we've been working on, MX Fuel. And we are the first power tool company to target and try to convert gas products now on site. We've been going after cut the cord, get rid of cords on site, like you mentioned. Now we're truly going after gas products. And and that's an exciting platform that's coming out for us. And I've got more to come on that.
Well, it's funny because when you mentioned like the AirTag, there's like, I'm going away for March break, and they're saying that with the travel still being chaotic at this time of year, you have to have like an AirTag on any checked bag. But maybe I should just throw a Milwaukee product in my suitcase. That way I can just pull it up and find out where it is. But you know, Brent, we've been talking about innovation, and I want to share the story with you because it'll kind of maybe strike up the next question, but also kind of explain how this all kind of came about. Was that, like as Steve mentioned, like we're a Milwaukee shop here at Cambrian R&D, like from all of our handheld tools, even our speakers that the students use when they're in the shop are Milwaukee. So like I've always taken for granted that we have Milwaukee everywhere, and I associate it with the work that we do here. And then like before the Christmas break, we always go to this one place after hockey for wings. And they were having a retirement party there that night. And this guy came over and he's trying to give us a piece of cake. And I've learned in my years that you don't take a piece of cake from a guy you don't know at a bar. But he was wearing a Milwaukee jacket that had like a heating pack in it, like to keep him warm. And he went on this whole thing. I'm like, what is this? And he's like, well, it's obviously for working in Northern Ontario. And, you know, when you're working outdoors and, you know, you need to stay warm. And I hadn't considered that would actually be a product offering. I just always associate it with, you know, the Sawzall or any other power tools. But obviously, like, and that's what kind of got my mind thinking. I'm like, what else, you know, does Milwaukee have out there that I haven't even considered? And obviously, I think that kind of got me, you know, thinking about from an innovative perspective, we have to have somebody from Milwaukee on to talk about that. And I know that we've already covered, you know, cordless innovation. You mentioned some of the cool stuff that's going on with Bluetooth and how to better optimize, you know, some of those tools. But before we kind of leave the innovation discussion, is there anything else like in terms of innovation that you could think of that maybe people don't even think about, like me, when I didn't think about the, you know, product offering when it comes to jackets to kind of help you, you know, stay safe and warm when you're working outside in northern areas like Sudbury?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. You said it right there, safety. And it's not just because it's in my job title. We take safety very seriously. And we actually recently launched a new innovative line of PPE products. But the truth is, like other people in the industry, we kind of view PPE as the last line of defense. It's like, hey, if all else fails, you have your PPE on and it'll protect you. And the truth is, with some of those safety features that I talked about before, we've been focused on safety for quite some time. And our strategy is following that. I don't know if you're familiar with the hierarchy of controls in the health and safety world. It's just basically a process to follow to say, hey, how can we do our best to reduce potential hazards? And it starts with elimination, which is you want to remove the hazard from the workplace. And at Milwaukee, one of the examples we have that we've done this with is a product like a remote control cable cutter for hydro or lines people. So this allows them to make a cut using a remote control on potentially live cable from up to 200 feet away, basically removing themselves from the hazard. And what I had seen in the past is, from my experience, guys would take a zip tie the trigger, and then put it on the cable, jam the battery in, and then hightail it the other way. And then if it was live, they'd be down a tool, but at least they weren't down a person. Now we've got what I think is probably a better and more safe solution for that application. And next would be substitution. So it's replacing the process with a safer alternative. So again, a Milwaukee example of this would be our plumbing press tools. Now users don't have to use an open flame to solder or weld pipe. They can simply push a button on a hydraulic tool and it'll install a press fitting on it. After that, we want to look at, hey, engineering controls. How can we physically change the way that product interacts with a user? And a good example, again, from Milwaukee perspective, is our pipe threader. It's actually got it's got a built-in gyroscope that senses if the tool rotates over 15 degrees and automatically shuts the tool down. And again, to avoid taking the user for a ride. Plumbers used to call it the threader. They'd call it the pony for that exact reason. Uh, and then next would be administrative controls. So we talked about the One Key software. It's a good example of that. What else? Other things you can do with that One Key software are set service reminders. So common equipment on a job site, fall arrest. It's got to be serviced every so often and on a regular basis. So you can actually put service reminders into the app and get a push notification that, hey, my fall arrest needs to be serviced within the next week. And then you have physical or notification that, yeah, I've got to do this. And it kind of mitigates that potential risk. And like I mentioned, lastly, and if all else fails, you've got your PPE on. And our approach to our line of PPE is simple. We want people to stay safe and stay productive. And a good example on the Milwaukee end is our new Bolt hard hat. So this is a head protection that allows you to utilize multiple hard hat attachments all at the same time. So for example, you can put a headlamp on the front, you can have your safety visor, earmuffs on, a sunshade on the back for those hot days in the summer, all onto one hard hat system at the same time. Yeah, I mean, if you had all of that on at the same time, it'd probably be a pretty heavy hard hat and you might have a sore neck, which is a whole other issue, but it really reduces the amount of what we were seeing in the field of those jimmy rig, zip tied attachments, which could fall off while you're using them, or in working from height situations could then fall off and then hurt somebody below. So it's a smarter system where you can securely attach attachments to your hard hat. And then not to mention the hard hat itself is really comfortable and well protected from my perspective.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, I grew up in like a forestry family and we use chainsaws a lot. And my dad has purchased electric chainsaws and they're just not the same. So one of the things I know you guys make electric chainsaws too. One of the things that it was difficult about the electric chainsaws, the early ones that I had used was, you couldn't get that sort of variable rev as you're going through the tree. Have you guys solved that? I know it's a bit of a off the cuff question, but
No,
it was a tough thing to use.
Yeah, no, and it kind of ties back to what I was talking about with fuel before. And what our saws now do is they kind of do the auto rev for you. So they'll recognize, hey, you're hitting a knot right now. You actually hear the motor rev up on its own, and it'll then get through that application. So it's that smart technology kicks in, so you don't need to manually feather the trigger with a chainsaw.
Oh, that's awesome. That's wicked. You see, I didn't even know you had an answer for that. I'm glad you did. So one of the things, I mean, listeners of the show know that sometimes I get really obsessed with particular business or sales things. And one of the things, as Milwaukee has increased market share over time, and you have such a loyal sort of product base and a good install base, how do you market new things to folks that are already, an all Milwaukee shop or an all Milwaukee job site? How do you constantly sort of your products are built to last. So how do you continually sort of push new products that are to be utilized by folks that are already converts to the Milwaukee brand?
Yeah, it's a fairly simple approach. I mean, first off, we do have an amazing loyal customer base, which can present challenges at times. Because unlike a lot of our competitors in the space, we're in front of our customers or consumers day in and day out. We're not only focused on kind of the product side and the innovation, we are a people machine and we invest in new people on an annual basis to connect with those users. So since I started, we were roughly, I would say 40, 50 people at Milwaukee in Canada. Now we're well over 400 in Canada. So we take our investment and our dollars from a marketing perspective and put it back into people. You won't see us in commercials, banners at like a sporting event or celebrity endorsements. And the reason being is, like you said, we launched so much new product. We launch more product in a month than some of our competitors do combined in a year. And we put too much effort into those new and innovative products to just hope that, hey, one of our loyal customers is going to tune in or click at the right time to receive the message on that new product. Our field resources are out there day in and day out, getting belly to belly with our largest customers to ensure they see every new product that Milwaukee has to offer. And like you mentioned, we do have that loyal customer base. So if we launch a product that really doesn't meet the demands of our users, our folks are going to hear about it, and that keeps us pretty humble and honest at the same time.
And I think that's what I figured. I mean, it's an interesting thing. So at the Center for Smart Mining, we work on mining solutions a lot. But I mean, our shop isn't necessarily a mining focused shop. We build products that then go into the mining sector. Now, you mentioned one of your verticals is in mining. I just wanted to for my own information and for the listeners, what are some of the mining specific products that Milwaukee offers? That seems of interest to me.
Yeah, I mean, from the mining perspective, we've always kind of taken that approach where we wanted to start to make tools for mining specifically. But the reality is mining is just a collection of different tradespeople that we were already making tools for anyway. So I mean, we view mines as call it like a little mini city where you've got electricians in there, you've got plumbers in there, you've got mechanical workers, and the handheld tools that we make all fit those needs. Now, we've had to make some adjustments within the conditions that those tools are using because it's a different environment. But it was a great learning experience, and we've now made tools that are built to last longer and withstand the mining conditions due to the air and water that gets into tools in those environments.
Yeah, it's something we have to deal with all the time. You're designing for a nearly maritime environment because there's water everywhere.
Yeah.
It can be challenging.
Yeah, wet water, but still like 30 degrees, depending on how deep you're going, right? So it's interesting environment for
rust
sure.
is never an issue, eh?
Yeah. No.
You know, Brent, you've been sharing a lot of great things about like what some of the great innovations that have happened in the past and what you're currently working on. Obviously, there's only so much that you can share, but if there was something that you can share about like what's really exciting in the future for Milwaukee from an innovation perspective, what could you possibly share? Not that we're going to ask you to break news on the Unlikely Innovators podcast, but if you did, we'd be open to it.
Yeah, a couple things. First, I mean, I mentioned MX and that platform that we've got that's going to go after gas. That's just getting started. I mean, M18 when we started that platform, it was 5 tools, and it's roughly over 250 tools now. And MX in 2022 was 8 to 10 tools. By the end of this year, it's going to be 20 tools, and we expect that growth trend is going to continue into the future. And then I guess more of a fun fact, but one of our loyal customers is actually Tiger Woods. Yeah, he uses, and I'll show you here. He uses the Milwaukee ink salt to mark his ball. There's actually an article in Golf Digest about him, and this is his marker of choice. Might just be because it's red and black, but he says it's the best mark, and I believe him.
Well, I did not know that actually sets us up for because we wanted to end with a fun question because you've been generous with your time. We want to let you get on with your day. But speaking of Tiger Woods and ball marking, we did see in our homework on you that you used to be you were once a golf camp director. And Steve and I know that the snow is starting to melt in Sudbury. Golf season will be here probably in a month or so. And from a business development perspective, we know we have to be on the golf course more than we are, but we don't typically hit the links because we're so bad at it. But we have to like break through, I think, our own self-consciousness and just like get out there, hit the range and figure it out. But like, if you could leave us with like one tip that you think would immediately help us because you've got a blank canvas with both of us, what would that be?
Well, I'll start with golf camp director was more of a fancy way of saying camp counselor because the golf camp was actually just cheaper than putting kids in daycare.
Okay.
But my tip would be pick a different sport. I've been golfing for 25 years and I'm still terrible. But like, honestly, all jokes aside, it is a very mental game. So yeah. My advice, ignore swing thoughts, the videos you've watched and all that stuff. And focus on one thing, make square contact with the ball. And that's the only thing I try to think about when I'm out there and maybe having a cold one or two.
That's honestly, we've asked, I think several other people that we've had on about that. And it's always the same thing. It's like, keep your eye on the ball, which is another one that that I still try to do. I never do. And then obviously have a cold beer nearby. I think definitely helps with the mental side of the game. So
it's more of a stress relieving sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's great. And you know what? I hope to use that this summer as we get out there. Brent Neilly, it was really great to have you on. We'll continue to be a Milwaukee shop. And it was just really great to hear some of the innovative things going on in Milwaukee, and to just really to really understand just the breadth of what Milwaukee's doing and where you're going in the future. So it was great to have you on, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I'll have to send you a couple of those tags so you can track your luggage, and we'll get you set up with the right golf markers to mark your golf.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's all we need, and we'll
There's
be
a free
ready.
plug for you.
That's all we need. That's exactly right, Mike. That's all we'll need. Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, thanks
Have
so
a
much,
great
Brent.
day.
Yeah,
Thanks
you too.
for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
That sound can only mean that we just talked to Brent Neilly from Milwaukee Tool Canada.
They're going to regret letting him come on the podcast. If they would have known, we would have turned it into a home improvement montage.
But you actually do
you
do a really good like grunt and whatever that noise that Tim Allen came up with is.
Yeah, I think the key to that one is that it has to end. You got to go high
Up,
at the end,
yeah,
right? Like it
that's
can't
right.
just be the grunt. You've got to have the.
Yeah,
So-
that's actually really good, Mike. I think
And
you're
this-
onto something here.
We'll look at the stats for the episode, and this is the precise moment when people stopped listening.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I won't stop doing it, but I know that they've stopped listening.
Yeah.
Any other takeaways today, Steve, that you want to did this bring back any PTSD from building that house for your sister? Stories, mishaps you'd want to share?
No, and I don't want this to necessarily be a commercial for Milwaukee, but we had lesser brands at the job site, and we were always all struggling to get to the Milwaukee, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, no, it is really what it like. And the story I told about seeing that guy at Overtime Bar wearing that Milwaukee jacket was like, that was the genesis of how this all came about, because yeah, it's one of those things where it's a household name. I think we've both grown up seeing those tools around. And I think now, especially, and even, I had that moment, even when like, I know that we had purchased some things from Milwaukee, years ago when we first really started to get the shop set up for the type of work that we're doing now and the workflow that we have.
Yeah.
And the speaker, I didn't realize, you know what I mean? Like, but of course they would make that because you need to listen to music on
Job
the work
site radio. Yeah.
Job site radio, right? And just one of those things where you take all those little things for granted. But yeah, that's a great product. Again, not a commercial. We just happen to love Milwaukee, and yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that they come out with something that would be really helpful for me around the job site. And that's maybe like the job site pizza oven, or the job site popcorn machine, the job site, I don't know, tagine, something like that.
Well, I'm sure there's like a lunch pail. Maybe that's, I'm assuming, again, we probably come up with some idea that does exist. Maybe
The
not the
job
ones that
site
you're
microwave.
or a heated lunchbox, or like a micro fridge for all your cold treats at the job site, Steve. Little ice cream cones in your lunch.
I think Brent would probably say back to the drawing board, boys.
Yeah,
but,
and I think he'd say that we've jumped the shark at this point. So at risk of having Milwaukee never come back on the show, we'll end it there. So again, thanks for listening. Thanks for Brent Neilly for joining us this week. We will be back as always with another conversation next week. So stay tuned for another episode of the Unlikely Innovators.
The Unlikely Innovators with Mike Commito and Steve Gravel. Presented by Cambrian R&D and the Center for Smart Mining.